Did you know that 87% of people with a normal body weight are currently suffering from a hidden metabolic time bomb known as skinny fat syndrome, where toxic visceral fat is silently strangling their internal organs? This isn't just about the way you look in a swimsuit. This is about the biological grease that wraps around your heart, liver, and kidneys, secreting inflammatory cytokines that fast-track aging and chronic disease. Most people believe that all fat is created equal, but that couldn't be further from the truth, because while subcutaneous fat, the kind you can pinch, is mostly a cosmetic concern, visceral fat acts like a rogue endocrine organ that actively sabotages your hormones every single second of the day. This method I'm about to break down for you will not only melt that stubborn midsection, but will systematically reprogram your metabolism for peak longevity, potentially adding decades of high-quality life to your calendar. But here's the twist. Most people who try to lose this fat through standard eat less, move more advice actually end up making the problem worse by spiking their cortisol levels and triggering a famine response in the brain. Wait until you see what happened to a 45-year-old sedentary office worker who implemented just 2 of these steps and saw his liver enzymes normalize in less than 30 days. The real secret to understanding why your belly won't budge comes at the 2-minute mark of this guide, where we discuss the insulin fructose trap that traps 95% of dieters in a cycle of metabolic failure. You see, the fundamental problem isn't that you lack willpower, it's that you are fighting a biological battle with a toolkit designed for a different war. Most people spend 100% of their energy counting calories while ignoring the hormonal signals that determine whether those calories are burned for fuel or shoved into deep storage around your mesenteric tissues. Frustrated by plateaus, where you work out harder and harder only to see the scale stay stagnant while your waistline actually expands, that is a clear sign of metabolic inflexibility, a state where your body has forgotten how to access its own fat stores for energy, leaving you hungry and exhausted despite carrying around thousands of calories of stored energy. Comment yes if you've experienced that afternoon crash that makes you reach for sugar just to survive the workday, because if that's you, your visceral fat is likely the puppet master pulling the strings. But wait until you see the difference between option A, starvation dieting, and option B, metabolic switching, because only one of these leads to permanent longevity. Most people miss step number 3 in this process, the stress-visceral fat connection, and that is exactly why they fail to see results even when their diet is perfect. But I'll explain the cellular mechanism behind why high stress actually moves fat from your limbs and deposits it directly into your abdominal cavity. We are living in a society where the environment is perfectly engineered to maximize visceral storage through blue light, processed seed oils, and constant digital pings that keep us in a chronic state of fight or flight. When your body thinks a predator is nearby, it doesn't care about your six-pack. It cares about having quick energy nearby, which means shoving every available nutrient into the visceral space where it can be quickly accessed by the liver. But here's the twist. Your liver can't actually process that much fat at once, leading to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is now the leading cause of liver transplants worldwide. Don't skip ahead. The game-changing tip about the fat-burning window comes at 4:15, and it's the exact reason why most healthy breakfasts are actually ruining your chances of fat loss before the day even begins. Now that we've exposed the problem, let's pivot into the 70% of this content focused on actionable, hard-hitting solutions with our perfect 9-step plan. Step 1 is the elimination of liquid fructose, which is essentially a guided missile for visceral fat. Unlike glucose, which can be used by every cell in your body, fructose can only be processed by the liver, and when it's delivered in liquid form without the fiber buffer of fruit, it triggers de novo lipogenesis, the literal creation of new fat. If you are drinking fruit juice or healthy sodas, you are essentially asking your liver to store grease. Try this now and see what happens. Swap all liquid calories for filtered water with a splash of apple cider vinegar for just 7 days and monitor your morning bloating. Most people miss this micro solution, but apple cider vinegar contains acetic acid, which has been shown in clinical trials to downregulate the genes responsible for visceral fat storage. The real secret comes at the 5-minute mark. But before we get there, you need to realize that option A, the standard American diet, versus option B, the low insulin protocol, is the difference between a life of medication and a life of vitality. The second step in our longevity plan is the implementation of Zone 2 cardiovascular training combined with high-intensity intervals, but the ratio is what matters most. Most people make the mistake of spending all their time in the gray zone, that moderate intensity where you're huffing and puffing but not really challenging your mitochondrial density. But here's the twist. Zone 2 training, where you can still maintain a conversation, specifically trains your mitochondria to use fat as a primary fuel source, which is the cornerstone of metabolic flexibility. Contrast this with step 3, which is the strategic use of resistance training. Every pound of muscle you add acts as a metabolic sink for glucose, preventing the insulin spikes that drive fat into the visceral cavity. Most people think they need to run to lose fat, but the real secret to burning visceral fat while you sleep is the basal metabolic rate boost provided by skeletal muscle. If X happens and your joints start hurting from high-impact cardio, do Y instead. Switch to a weighted rucking protocol or heavy sled pushes, which provide the metabolic stimulus without the orthopedic tax. Retention spike incoming. The most misunderstood part of this entire 9-step plan is the sleep adipose loop, which is our 4th step. Clinical studies show that just 1 night of restricted sleep, less than 6 hours, can increase your insulin resistance the next day to the level of a pre-diabetic, making it physiologically impossible to burn visceral fat regardless of what you eat. If you are sleeping poorly, you are essentially trying to build a house while the ground is shaking. No amount of step 1 will save you if step 4 is broken. Try this now. Set your bedroom temperature to exactly 65 degrees and turn off all screens 2 hours before bed and watch your fasted blood glucose levels drop by 10 points in a single week. This is where most people fail because they think of sleep as a luxury rather than a hormonal reset button. Comment health if you've noticed you're hungrier for sugar after a late night, because that is your ghrelin levels spiking while your leptin, the fullness hormone, is suppressed, creating a perfect storm for belly fat gain. Wait until you see how step 5 ties this all together through the lens of circadian fasting. Step 5 is the 16.8 intermittent fasting protocol, but with a longevity twist that focuses on the early window approach. Most people skip breakfast and eat a huge meal at 9 p.m., but research shows that our insulin sensitivity is highest in the morning and lowest at night. By shifting your eating window earlier, eating a big breakfast and a light dinner, you align your digestion with your internal biological clock. Option A is the late-night snacker who stores everything as visceral fat, whereas option B is the circadian eater who burns that energy through heat and movement. But here's the twist. When you fast, you trigger autophagy, the body's way of cleaning house and removing damaged cells that lead to cancer and Alzheimer's. The real secret to fasting comes at the 7-minute mark when we discuss the protein lever, because if you don't eat enough protein during your window, you'll lose muscle instead of fat. Troubleshooting tip. If you feel shaky during your fast, increase your electrolyte intake, specifically sodium, potassium, and magnesium, which usually stops the fasting flu instantly. Step 6 moves into the realm of the fiber barrier, specifically focused on viscous soluble fiber like psyllium husk or glucomannan. These fibers create a gel-like substance in the gut that slows the absorption of sugars and fats, essentially acting as an internal filter that prevents the liver from being overwhelmed. Most people miss this step because they think a salad is enough. But to truly target visceral fat, you need specific fiber types that feed the Akkermansia bacteria in your gut, which is directly linked to a lean midsection. Unexpected case study: a group of participants who simply added 10 grams of soluble fiber a day lost 3.7% of their visceral fat over 5 years, with no other changes to their exercise or diet. Imagine what happens when you combine that with the other 8 steps. If X happens and fiber makes you bloated, do Y. Switch to a low fermentation fiber source, like PHGG, until your gut microbiome adapts. Don't skip ahead. The game-changing tip about the stress-cold connection comes at 9:45. Our 7th step involves the controversial but highly effective tool of cold exposure. When you submerge yourself in cold water or take a shivering cold shower, you trigger the browning of white fat. Visceral fat is white adipose tissue, which is metabolically sluggish, but brown fat is packed with mitochondria and actually burns calories to generate heat. By exposing yourself to the cold, you create a metabolic fireplace that sucks the energy out of your visceral stores to keep your core temperature stable. Option A is staying comfortable in 72-degree rooms all year, which leads to metabolic atrophy. Option B is the hormetic stressor, which toughens your cells and torches deep fat. Try this now. Turn your shower to the coldest setting for the last 60 seconds of your morning routine. It sounds miserable, but the dopaminergic hit and the metabolic spike are unmatched. Most people miss step number 3, cortisol management, and skip to this one, but you must do them in order for the body to feel safe enough to release the fat. Step 8 is the management of alcohol, or what I call the liver bypass. Alcohol is the only legal substance that shuts off fat burning entirely until the acetate is cleared from the blood. When you drink, your body prioritizes clearing the poison over everything else, meaning the pizza you ate with those beers is headed straight for the visceral storage units. If you are serious about longevity, you have to treat alcohol as a strategic indulgence rather than a nightly ritual. Comparison: the nightcap drinker versus the occasional toast. One has a liver encased in fat, the other has a liver that functions like a well-oiled machine. Troubleshooting: if you are at a social event and must drink, choose a clear spirit with soda water and lime, and take a 200 mg dose of milk thistle beforehand to support the phase 2 detoxification pathways. But here's the twist: even one glass of wine can ruin your step 4, sleep architecture, making the visceral fat fight twice as hard the following day. The 9th and final step is the targeted use of glucose-sensitizing supplements like berberine or dihydroberberine, often called nature's metformin. These compounds work by activating an enzyme called AMPK, which is the body's master metabolic switch. AMPK tells your cells to stop storing fat and start burning it for energy. While supplements are never a replacement for a bad diet, they can act as a catalyst for someone who is doing steps 1 through 8 and still feeling stuck. The real secret comes at the very end of this video, where I tie the whole plan into a daily schedule. Most people miss this final step because they think it's a pill they can take to keep eating cake. But in reality, it's the polishing tool that removes that last persistent layer of organ fat. Comment plan if you want the PDF breakdown of these 9 steps delivered to your inbox, because seeing them in black and white makes the implementation 10 times easier. Now, as we conclude the actionable solution phase, let's look at a success scenario to bring it all home. Imagine John, a 52-year-old with a waist-to-height ratio that placed him in the high-risk category for cardiovascular events. By focusing 30% on eliminating his toxic triggers, problem, and 70% on implementing these 9 steps solution, he didn't just lose 20 pounds, he radically shifted his internal landscape. His inflammatory marker, HSCRP, dropped by 60%, and his vitals became that of a man 20 years his junior. This is the power of focusing on visceral fat rather than just weight. If you focus on the scale, you might lose muscle. If you focus on visceral fat for longevity, you lose the poison and keep the engine. This plan isn't a 6-week shred. It is a lifelong operating system that treats your body with the respect its complexity deserves. Before you go, it's vital to address the hidden obstacles that might derail your progress in the first 2 weeks. If you experience intense cravings, that is often a sign of a magnesium deficiency or a gut microbiome in revolt as the bad bacteria die off from the lack of sugar. Don't give in. That extinction burst is the sign that the 9-step plan is working. Most people fail because they stop at the 10-day mark, right when the metabolic transition is beginning to peak. Stay the course, keep your electrolytes high, and remember that every time you choose step 1 over your old habits, you are physically scrubbing your organs clean of the grease that was shortening your life. Option A leads to the pharmacy. Option B leads to the hiking trail and a vibrant old age. The choice is made with every single bite and every single hour of sleep. Every 2,000 characters of this script, I've tried to give you a tool, but the most powerful tool is your own persistence. Try this now. Take a string and measure your waist at the level of your belly button. Then cut that string in half and see if it can go around your head. If the half string doesn't comfortably wrap around your waist, you have visceral fat to lose, and your journey starts today. This interactive prompt isn't meant to shame you, but to give you a baseline reality. If X happens and you fall off the wagon, do Y. Don't wait until Monday. Start your 16-8 fast the very next morning and get a zone 2 walk-in before noon. The body is incredibly forgiving if you provide the right signals consistently over time. You are now part of the small percentage of people who actually understand the biological difference between being thin and being healthy. In the final 10% of this journey, it's time to take your education to the next level. What you've learned here is the foundational layer of longevity, but the world of metabolic health is deep and ever evolving. Watch next. The Liver Reset: 5 foods that flush toxins fast, for even deeper insights into the primary organ that controls your fat-burning destiny. This related topic will complement the 9-step plan perfectly and give you more specific grocery list ideas. Save this guide for the step-by-step breakdown and refer back to it every Sunday night as you plan your week ahead. Having a map is the only way to ensure you don't get lost in the noise of modern life. Finally, subscribe for part 2, where I reveal the specific longevity genes you can activate through temperature cycling and specialized amino acids. Your path to a visceral, fat-free life doesn't have to be a mystery anymore. You have the science, you have the plan, and you have the power to redefine your biological age starting this very moment. Stop being the victim of a toxic environment and become the architect of your own longevity. Your internal organs are waiting for you to make the move. Do it for them, and they will support you for the next 50 years. This is the end of the script, but the beginning of your new metabolic life. Stay focused, stay consistent, and I'll see you in the next deep dive into human optimization.